I didn't expect her to remember me. Most people don't. I'm the kind of regular who blends in. Same time, same corner seat at the cafe, black coffee, no sugar. The kind of customer who vanishes into background noise. But that morning, when I stepped in with rain still on my sleeves, she looked up from behind the counter and said, without checking the screen, "Black, no sugar." Her smirk was faint, almost playful, almost practiced. She tapped the cup twice like it meant something. Then, "Call me Mississippi. At least while I'm at work." I laughed, though it came out rough. Not because it was funny, but because it was easier than showing what I felt, that odd flicker of being seen. She was older. Not in the way that pushed her into another world, but in the way she carried herself like she'd lived through too many mornings just like this one. Her hair was pulled back, though a few strands escaped near her jaw. She wore the cafe apron like armor. "Miss, huh?" I said, trying to make it light. My hands found the napkin on the counter, folding it in half, then again. A stupid tick, but better than staring. "That's right," she said, eyes steady. "Mississippi." And then she slid the coffee across, as if that settled it. The place was nearly empty. Just the hiss of the machine, the faint hum of a song that didn't belong to anyone. I sat in my usual corner, cup warming my palms. I watched the rain stripe the window, thought about the text I never sent last night. I'd typed it, stared at it, deleted it. Not even worth saying hey to someone who probably didn't notice my silence. That's the thing, I'm used to silence. Sometimes it's easier to live in it than to risk the sound of no reply. I caught myself glancing back toward the counter. She was wiping it down slowly, like she had time to kill, though the place didn't need it. Every so often she'd glance up. Once, our eyes met longer than it should have. Not in a dramatic way, more like we both realized we'd been doing the same thing, watching. She looked away first. I tried to drink, but the coffee had cooled already. Too much staring, not enough sipping. I tapped the cup against the table. It sounded too loud in the quiet. When I stood to leave, she was stacking cups near the sink. I hesitated, hand on the door. There was no reason to say anything, just another morning, just another coffee. But something in me resisted walking out like I always do. "You always remember orders?" I asked. She looked over her shoulder, half a smile tugging. "Only the ones who never change." It landed heavier than it should have. Maybe because it felt like she was saying more. I nodded, throat tight, and pushed the door open. The air outside was damp, cool, heavy with rain. I should have gone home. I should have kept walking. But when my phone buzzed in my pocket, I froze. Not a message from who I'd hoped. Not even close. It was hers. Somehow, in some unnoticed exchange, she had slipped her number onto my screen. Just a single text. "Don't forget, it's Mississippi." I stared at it too long, the rain blurring everything around me. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel entirely invisible. The text sat in my phone for hours before I answered. I typed a dozen replies, erased each one. Finally, I sent something plain. "Yes, Mississippi." Her response came almost instantly, a single period. Like she'd been waiting. A week later, I found myself back at the cafe after closing. Not by design. I'd left a notebook on the counter that morning, and she texted, "Still here if you want to grab it." When I pushed the door open, the place was empty except for her. No apron this time. Just a loose sweater, sleeves pushed to her elbows. She had a mug of tea in her hands. "I thought you'd forgotten it," she said, sliding my notebook across the table. "Would have been an excuse to come back." It slipped out before I could stop it. Her eyes flicked toward me, quick, unreadable. Then she smirked. "Careful. That almost sounded like something." I sat. Not because I had to, but because leaving felt wrong. She poured me tea without asking, pushed the cup across. The steam curled up between us. "You always stay late?" I asked. "Not always. Just don't like going home to an empty place." She said it too casually, like she wanted to throw it away. Something shifted in me at that. I thought of the unsent texts on my phone, the silence I kept feeding. You live alone? She nodded. Since the divorce. A few years now. She traced her finger along the rim of her mug. You get used to the quiet until you don't. The words hung heavy. I folded the napkin under my hand into tighter squares, my chest tight with a strange mix of comfort and danger. Do your kids visit? I asked. Her laugh was soft but tired. One's in college. The other pretends I don't exist. That's what happens when you're the parent who stayed. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, more like a wire drawn tight. I caught myself staring at her hands, the way her thumbs circled the mug. I imagined reaching across, just placing my hand over hers. The thought startled me. Too young, I reminded myself. Too close. Neighbors. People notice. She must have seen something in my face because she tilted her head and said, quieter this time, You're what, 24? 22. She breathed out through her nose, like that detail made it worse. Or maybe better. I couldn't tell. The clock on the wall ticked. My tea cooled. Finally she stood, gathering the mugs. But as she passed me, she brushed her hand against my shoulder. Just lightly, as if steadying herself. It lasted half a second. Meant nothing. But I'm still thinking about it. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It was supposed to be nothing. Just another evening coffee. She locked the door early, flipped the sign. Said it was slow anyway. I helped stack chairs without being asked, just to stay longer. We didn't talk much. Every scrape of wood against tiles sounded louder than it should. When she passed me a chair, our fingers brushed. Neither of us mentioned it. You don't have to stay, she said finally. I know. But I didn't move. She leaned against the counter, arms folded. The sweater slipped at her shoulder, and she tugged it back up without thinking. I watched the movement too long. Looked away too fast. People will notice, she said, almost to herself. Notice what? My voice cracked at the edges. She gave a small, humorless laugh. Exactly. The door rattled then, someone tugging at the handle. A shadow outside, blurred by the glass. My stomach tightened. Close, she called out, sharper than usual. The shadow lingered, then moved on. We stayed still, listening to footsteps fade. When she exhaled, it sounded shaky. See? That's what I mean. I nodded, staring at the empty cups on the counter. My chest was buzzing, restless. Too aware of how close we were, too aware of the silence. I don't want to complicate your life, I said. You already have. The words slipped from her fast, then she froze like she wished she could pull them back. Her eyes softened. Forget I said that. But I couldn't. I sat on one of the stacked chairs, legs jittering. She moved closer, wiping down a table that didn't need it. Her sleeve brushed my arm. Neither of us shifted away. You remind me of... She stopped. Shook her head. Never mind. Remind you of what? She pressed her lips together, not answering. I leaned in, just slightly, not enough to cross anything but enough to feel the pull. Her breath caught. She set the rag down carefully, like even that mattered too much. I can't, she whispered. I nodded. My throat was dry. I know. And still, we didn't move. Her hand rested on the table between us, fingers spread. Mine hovered closer, closer, like magnets in slow motion. Not touching. Not yet. If I reached just an inch farther, everything would shift. Her eyes flicked to mine, then down to my mouth. Back up. The clock on the wall ticked too loud. My chest hurt from holding still. Don't, she said finally. Barely a sound. But she didn't move her hand. And that silence between us, thicker than any words, felt like the closest I'd ever been to crossing something I couldn't uncross. It happened after closing again. The rain had stopped this time, leaving the air damp and heavy. She asked if I'd walk her home. Casual, like it was nothing. We stayed on the quiet streets, shoes clicking against wet pavement. Her arms folded tight, though it wasn't cold. You don't have to, she said, eyes forward. I know. That was enough. We stopped at the bench outside her building. She sat, smoothing her skirt as if it needed it. I stayed standing, hands stuffed in my pockets. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Just the hum of a street lamp, the drip of water from the trees. Finally, she said, Someone asked me today if I was seeing anyone. My chest tightened. And? I laughed. She shook her head, almost smiling. But then I thought of you. And it didn't feel like a joke anymore. I sat beside her before I realized I had moved. The wood was damp, the air thick. My knee brushed hers. She didn't pull away. I shouldn't feel this way, she whispered, fingers knotting together in her lap. You're too young. Too close. If anyone knew. Her voice broke off. She bit her lip, eyes fixed on the ground. I wanted to tell her it didn't matter. That I didn't care. But the words stuck in my throat, too heavy, too final. Instead, I said, I think about you. More than I should. Her breath caught. She turned her head, looked at me like she was seeing something dangerous. Or something she'd been waiting for. You don't know what that means, she said. Then tell me. She shook her head again, slower this time. Her eyes were glassy, like she was holding something back. A car passed, headlights sweeping across us. She flinched, then settled again. Her hand rested on the bench between us, fingers curling toward mine. I keep telling myself it's nothing, she said. That it's just attention. Just company. Her voice thinned, almost broke. But when you're here, it doesn't feel small. And that scares me. I swallowed, throat raw. The street lamp buzzed above us, too loud. I don't want to ruin you, she whispered. You won't. The silence after that stretched, fragile as glass. Her hand shifted closer. Mine did too. Our fingers hovered, nearly touching. My heart hammered so hard I thought she'd hear it. She turned her face toward me, slow, deliberate. Our eyes met. She didn't look away this time. The space between us shrank until I could feel her breath. And then she whispered, more to herself than to me, What are we doing? The next morning, I went back to the cafe. Same time, same corner. But she wasn't there. The girl at the register, new, younger, took my order with a polite half-smile. I asked if Miss was in. She called out, the girl said, shrugging. Didn't say why. I sat with my coffee, staring at the empty space behind the counter. It was strange how much air a single absence could take up. 2 days later, she texted. Short. Busy this week. Don't wait up. That was all. No smirk. No tease. Just distance. I typed back 3 different replies. You okay? / want to talk? / I can wait, but deleted them all. Ended up sending nothing. When I finally saw her again, it wasn't at the cafe. It was outside, near the corner store, arms full of groceries. She almost didn't notice me until I said her name. She froze, then smiled, but it was thin, like something she had to hold in place. Hey, she said, shifting the bags in her arms. You've been gone. Yeah. Things got complicated. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I offered to carry a bag. She hesitated, then handed me one anyway. The weight surprised me, cans, bottles. Heavier than it looked. We walked to her building in silence. The distance between us felt wider than the street. At her door, she set the bags down to unlock it. For a second, I thought she might invite me in. But she didn't. Instead, she said quietly, My son's back. Just for a while. He dropped out of school. I nodded, though my chest sank. That explained everything. The absence, the stiffness, the way she looked over her shoulder like someone might appear at any second. Does he know about? I started, then stopped. She caught the unfinished thought. Her face tightened. There's nothing to know. The words stung more than I expected. She pushed the door open, lifted the bags inside. Didn't look at me again until she had to say it. Thank you? The door clicked shut softly, but it felt louder than a slam. I went home and sat with my phone glowing in my hand. Typed, I miss you. Backspaced. Typed, it doesn't matter to me. Deleted. In the end, nothing got sent. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The next day, I walked past the cafe. My usual seat was empty. I didn't sit down. And for the first time since she smirked and told me to call her miss, I wondered if maybe I'd only been filling a silence she already meant to keep. It happened on a Sunday evening. Late. The cafe was dark, her apartment light glowing faintly above the street. I hadn't planned on stopping. I was just walking, restless. But when I saw her in the kitchen window, I froze. I almost kept going. Almost. Instead, I found myself at her door. She opened it slower than usual, like she'd already guessed it was me. Her sweater sleeves were pushed up, a dish towel draped over her shoulder. You shouldn't be here, she said, but her voice was soft. Tired. I know. We stood there too long, either moving. Finally, she stepped back. I crossed the threshold. Her kitchen was warm, cluttered. A pot of tea sat cooling on the stove. She poured a cup without asking, slid it toward me on the counter. Neither of us spoke. The only sounds were the drip of the faucet, the faint hum of the fridge. I wrapped my hands around the cup. I don't know what this is, I said finally. But I can't keep pretending it doesn't matter. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, eyes fixed on me. Her jaw tightened, loosened. You think I haven't tried to tell myself the same thing? Then why keep pushing me away? Her laugh cracked. Because you're 22. Because my son sleeps in the next room. Because people talk. Because when you leave, I'll still be here, and I don't want to be left with pieces. The words hit hard, sharper than she meant. I stared at the tea, at the little swirl of steam still rising. I'm not here to break you, I said quietly. For the first time that night, she looked straight at me. Her eyes glassy, guarded. Then what are you here for? I didn't answer right away. My chest felt tight, my throat worse. Finally I said, to stop pretending I don't feel something when I see you. Even if I shouldn't. Even if it's nothing. She pressed her hands flat against the counter, exhaling slowly. The silence stretched again, thick as ever. Then she came around to the table, sat across from me. Her hand lay on the wood, palm open. Not reaching. Just there. It took me a full minute to set my hand beside hers. Not touching. Just close enough to feel the warmth. She closed her eyes, breathed out. When she opened them again, her shoulders seemed lighter though her face was still shadowed. We can't fix what this is, she whispered. Maybe not. My voice broke, but I didn't look away. But we don't have to pretend it never happened. For the first time in weeks, she smiled. Small. Worn. Real. And when her fingers brushed mine, just barely, like a test, I let them stay there. Okay, she said. That was all. Time didn't solve anything. It just softened the edges. Weeks passed. Her son stayed for a while, then left again, drifting back into his own orbit. She didn't talk about it much, just sighed when the silence returned to her apartment. By then, I'd stopped being just the customer who always ordered black coffee at 8:47 a.m. I still sat in the same corner, but now sometimes she sat across from me, pretending to wipe a table that didn't need it. Sometimes she didn't pretend at all. We never named what it was. There were no declarations, no big shifts. Just small ones. A walk shared more often than not. A cup of tea poured without asking. The way her hand lingered a second longer on the counter when mine brushed it. We found our rhythm in the quiet spaces. Sunday evenings on the bench outside her building, the wood still damp from rain. Mornings when she smirked faintly and said, "Black, no sugar." As though the words belonged to just us now. Once, I asked why she'd first told me to call her Mississippi. She laughed, shaking her head. Habit. Easier than being a person when you're standing behind a counter. And now? I asked. Her eyes softened. Now you know better. There were still doubts. I caught myself wondering if I was too much weight for her to carry, if the years between us would stretch wider with time. She confessed once that she still felt guilty, like she was stealing something that wasn't meant for her. But the guilt faded in the day-to-day. In groceries carried upstairs. In mugs of tea left waiting. In the way we sat in silence that never felt empty anymore. It wasn't perfect. It was lived in. And somehow, that was enough. One morning, I found myself at the cafe earlier than usual. She wasn't ready yet, apron still hanging on a hook, hair loose around her face. You're early, she said, pouring my coffee anyway. I glanced at the clock. 8:47 on the dot. I smiled. Right on time. She looked at me for a long moment, then shook her head, amused. You and your timing. I sipped the coffee, still hot, still bitter. The kind of taste you have to grow into. Looking back, I can't name the moment it all turned. There was no line drawn, no wall broken in a single gesture. Just a series of quiet shifts, stacking until we were here, together, in a way that felt both impossible and inevitable. And sometimes, when she catches me staring too long, she just smirks and whispers, low enough for only me to hear. Don't forget. It's Mississippi. But I know better now. Sparkles, did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?